chamber was cold, lit by a sterile white glow that bounced off metal walls. At its center stood a boy no older than 10 shackled to an obsidian pillar. His small frame trembled, not from the chill, but from the weight of 1,000 eyes. Watching from across the galaxy, rows of alien dignitaries, adorned in their ceremonial robes, filled the tiers of the council hall. Their faces were a mix of scaled, chitinous, and furred, but all carried the same expression: detached judgment. At the highest dais sat the Speaker of the Galactic Council, a towering figure of silver and bone, his voice a cold echo that filled the chamber. "Humanity has defied the accord," the Speaker declared. "The price of rebellion is death." Gasps rippled through the audience, not out of sympathy for the child, but because of the method. Executing a human child in open session was unheard of. Even among species who thrived on cruelty, this was a line few dared to cross. The boy's eyes searched the crowd, desperate, but met only contempt and curiosity. He opened his mouth to speak, to beg, perhaps, but the restraints tightened around his throat. A mechanical arm descended, humming with lethal energy. The sentence was carried out without ceremony. One flash of white-hot light, one muffled gasp, and then silence, heavy and suffocating, settled over the hall. The Speaker turned to the assembly. "Let this serve as a reminder," he intoned. "The Council's will is absolute. Defiance will be erased root and stem." The session ended, and the delegates dispersed, their conversations hushed but tinged with intrigue. Few realized what had just happened would ignite a war unlike any in recorded history. Far from the council hall, aboard a modest transport skimming through the void, a message was already being transmitted across encrypted human channels. A father was dead silent as the transmission replayed on loop before him, every frame searing into his mind. The boy's final glance, the merciless glow of that energy beam, the smug calm of the Speaker's voice. Admiral Logan Creed didn't speak, didn't move, but the fire in his eyes said what no words could. The galaxy had made its last mistake. The death of one child would awaken something ancient, something the Council believed had been buried in the ashes of old wars. Humanity had been underestimated before. They would never make that error again. Logan rose slowly, the leather of his uniform creaking in the dim silence of his command deck. Outside the viewport stretched the stars, cold and eternal. His reflection stared back at him, jaw tight, fists clenched. "Prepare the channels," he said at last, voice like steel drawn from a scabbard. "Wake them up." Across hidden vaults buried in the crust of dead moons, in abandoned shipyards forgotten by time, alarms began to wail. Hatches sealed, for centuries ground open. Rusted steel groaned as it tasted vacuum again. And deep in the black, where ancient war hulks slept like gods entombed, red eyes flickered to life. The galaxy had demanded a reminder of what humanity truly was. It was about to receive one dot in the blackness beyond charted space, forgotten places, stirred with life. Vast orbital rings, cloaked in adaptive camouflage, began to hum with power. Magnetic cranes shifted like sleeping titans, hauling skeletal frames of warships into the light after centuries of silence. Earth's official fleets, the ones the Council permitted, were a joke. Patrol corvettes, diplomatic escorts, freighters, fitted with token weapons. But this was something different. This was a ghost from an age when humanity was feral, unbound, and hungry, before the Council's chains, before the treaties, before the humiliation. The message rippled across encrypted networks like a wildfire. Project Revenant, reactivation authorized. In every hidden vault, dormant AI cores blinked awake, their synthetic minds tasting consciousness for the first time in 300 years. "Status check complete," droned a machine voice deep inside Vault Theta 9, beneath the crust of Europa's third moon. "All units operational, awaiting command." The vault doors cracked open, releasing a breath of stale air into the void. And out they came, massive hulls plated in obsidian alloys, bristling with cannons that violated every council weapons accord. These were not ships. They were extinction engines. Each one bore names etched in steel. Names pulled from humanity's blood-soaked mythology: Leviathan, Ragnarok, Behemoth, Fury, and above them all, at the heart of the fleet loomed a warship, the size of a small continent. The Revenant, flagship of Earth's first and only galactic conquest. A vessel so feared that the Council buried its very existence in sealed archives. Now, it rose again, on Earth, chaos reigned. The Council's broadcast of the child's execution, meant to terrify humanity into obedience, had done the opposite. Cities seethed with rage. Factory worlds doubled their output, but not for trade. The orbital elevators ran day and night, carrying up cargo that was never logged on official manifest. And in the underbelly of New Geneva, the capital of human governance, an emergency conclave convened. Generals, spy masters, and old ghosts of the Black Ops world gathered in a steel-walled bunker beneath the oceans. The holotable flickered to life, painting the air with schematics of dreadnoughts. At its head stood Logan Creed, a monolith of calm. Fury. They executed a child, Logan said, his voice low, carrying the weight of inevitability. Not a soldier, not an insurgent, a boy. They wanted to break us, muttered Admiral Kessler, his scarred hands gripping the edge of the table. Instead, they've signed their death warrant. Around the table, nods of grim assent. This will be war on a scale the galaxy hasn't seen since the first contact conflicts, said Director Vance, head of Earth's Intelligence Bureau. The Council won't underestimate us this time. They'll come at us with everything. Logan's eyes, cold and sharp, locked onto hers. Then we make sure everything isn't enough. With a gesture, he summoned a new hologram. The room fell silent as the Revenant's towering silhouette rotated above the table, casting long shadows on the steel floor. This ship, Logan said, once broke an empire. And now it will break a council. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the generators, the faint vibration of the ocean currents above, they were the only sounds. Then Kessler grinned, the first hint of dark satisfaction since the boy's death. It's time the galaxy remembered who we are. Beyond. The oceans, beyond the clouds, the stars themselves seemed to shiver. Because humanity wasn't preparing for war. Humanity was preparing for vengeance. High above the glittering spires of Aurelia, primed the jewel of the Galactic Alliance, the council chamber burned with light. 12 colossal pillars formed a circle around the chamber, each carved from the bedrock of a different world. At their bases, the counselors sat upon floating thrones of crystal and alloy, their visages projected as towering holograms for those attending remotely. The air was thick with unease. Word had spread like plasma fire through the trade routes and military channels. Humans were mobilizing. The reports cannot be accurate, hissed Chancellor Viric, a serpentine being whose scales shimmered like molten silver. They lack the means for such an operation. The Accords stripped them of heavy arms centuries ago. And yet, rumbled Counselor Drax, his voice like stones grinding in a furnace, our patrol fleets along the outer veil have vanished, entire squadrons. No distress calls, no debris. A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber. Silence fell when the Speaker of the Council leaned forward on his throne. His form cloaked in woven threads of starlight. Explain, he demanded. His tone cold enough to frost the air. A trembling figure stepped forward, a Zarenian intelligence. Officer, thin and pale, his neural implants flickering. He bowed low, then activated his wrist console. A holoscreen bloomed above the floor, displaying grainy images captured at the edge of council-controlled space. The room erupted in alarmed chatter. A fleet massive and dark as a living shadow loomed in the images. Angular hulls sharp as razors, each bristling with weapons that should not exist. Energy signatures spiked off the charts, far beyond anything the Accord permitted. That is impossible, whispered Viric. Those look like Leviathans. The human dreadnought. Class was dismantled 3 centuries ago. The officer swallowed hard. With respect, Chancellor. The dreadnought in this image is not a Leviathan. Its dimensions far exceed the old class. It matches no design in our archives. The image rotated, revealing the insignia etched into the ship's prow, a stylized skull framed by broken chains. Beneath it, a single name pulsed in crimson script, Revenant, Gasps filled the chamber. "It's a myth," spat Virik, though his voice quavered. "A phantom from their war legends." The speaker rose from his throne, towering above them all. His eyes blazed like suns collapsing into black holes. "Phantoms do not erase fleets," he said. "Phantoms do not burn worlds." A heavy silence settled. Each counselor understood what the others dared not speak. If humanity had truly restored its ancient arsenal, the balance of power was shattered. Finally, the speaker's voice sliced through the stillness like a blade. "Declare Condition Omega. Summon the legions. Activate the vanguard worlds. Every ship, every soldier mobilize." Drax snarled, slamming a clawed fist against the arm of his throne. "And what of Earth?" The speaker's gaze darkened. "Earth will burn. Their people will scatter to the void. Their name will be erased from every archive. This, uprising dies before it begins." No one dared argue. Not here, not now. But deep within the speaker's mind, a sliver of unease wormed its way in. He remembered the old Whisper stories of human fury, of wars so brutal they nearly unmade the galaxy itself. He dismissed the thought, but it lingered like a shadow. Behind the stars, the war room aboard the Revenant pulsed with low light, the glow of tactical holoscreens painting the steel walls in hues of crimson and gold. Officers stood in silence, their faces hard, eyes locked on the massive figure at the center table. Admiral Logan Creed didn't pace. He didn't shout. He simply stood there, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping across the men and women who had answered the call, those who would command the first storm humanity had unleashed in centuries. 3 days ago, Logan began, his voice calm but heavy with iron, the council murdered a child. The room remained silent. No one shifted. No one spoke. "They thought it would break us," he continued. "They thought fear would make us kneel. They were wrong." He gestured to the holodisplay above the table. The galaxy flared into view clusters of stars, trade routes, and spheres of council authority dominating the map. Logan's hand cut across it, marking crimson lines that pierced deep into council territory. "For 300 years, he said, they've kept us on a leash. They've stripped us of weapons, chained our fleets, dictated how we live, what we build, what we dream. That ends today." A murmur rippled through the room, the restrained growl of soldiers who had waited lifetimes for these words. Logan's eyes burned like twin suns. "We've awakened what they thought dead. The Revenant sails again. And behind it 47 Leviathan-class dreadnoughts, 112 behemoths, 2,000 Fury frigates. Every piece of steel they feared, every blade they tried to dull, we've sharpened." He leaned forward, placing both hands on the table, the crimson glow casting his face in shadow. "The Council believes we're still the species they tamed. They've forgotten the truth." His voice dropped, a whisper that somehow carried to every ear. "We were never tamed. We were waiting." The officers straightened as one, their fists pounding against their chests in silent salute. Not the ceremonial gesture of the councils fleets, but the old human vow, the one whispered in trenches and burned into legends. "No chains, no mercy." Logan straightened. "Our first strike is simple. Cut their eyes and burn their claws. We hit the Vanguard relay at Helios Prime. Without it, their fleets can't coordinate. After that, we keep hitting until the stars themselves bleed." Admiral Kessler stepped forward, his scarred mouth twisting into a grim smile. "What about the legions? They'll throw everything at us." Logan met his gaze, unflinching. "Then we give them everything they've asked for." The war room erupted not with cheers, but with something far more dangerous, quiet determination. Every officer turned, moving with purpose toward their stations. The hum of engines deepened, a vibration that thrummed through the bones of the ship like the heartbeat of some awakening god outside. The Revenant moved slow at first, then with the momentum of inevitability. Around it, the fleet assembled in silent formation, their dark hulls swallowing starlight, their weapons arrays glowing like distant suns. Far away on countless human worlds, encrypted broadcasts flared to life, not orders, not speeches, Just one symbol, a broken chain over a crimson star, and beneath it, 4 words that would echo through the void. They drew first blood. Helios Prime was a beacon of council supremacy. A ringed giant orbiting a crimson sun, its skies glittered. With orbital platforms and fleet relays. Hundreds of ships, frigates, carriers, and escorts patrolled its lanes, their silver hulls gleaming like blades in the light. It was the heart of the Vanguard network, the neural spine linking the councils. Armadas. With the relay intact, their fleets moved like a single organism, striking with precision. Without it, they would be blind, for centuries. It had been unassailable. Until now, the darkness beyond the Helios system stirred, the void bending under. A silent storm. Shadows slid across the stars, so vast they swallowed constellations whole. "Command, we have mass readings." The voice of a Zyrenian sentinel broke off into static. His last image, burned into the feed, was a reflection of something impossible, a wall of black steel emerging from the abyss. The Revenant led the charge. Its hull blazed with awakening fury, thrusters igniting in white fire as its main. Cannons locked onto targets thousands of kilometers away. Around it, the fleet unfolded in perfect silence, a phalanx of death rising from the void. "Target Helios relay," Logan ordered. His voice was calm, almost serene, as if he were reading. A eulogy. In the war room, crimson lights pulsed. Weapon safeties dropped. Magnetic rails thrummed as warheads, dormant for centuries, tasted vacuum once more, and then the void erupted. The first salvo tore through the darkness like the wrath of old gods. Kinetic slugs the size of city blocks screamed toward the orbital. Platforms striking with forces measured in tectonic nightmares. Helios's defenses lit up in a storm of plasma and tracer fire, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a net, one by one. The Council's platforms shattered rings of fire blossoming across the planet's horizon. Frigates and destroyers swarmed to intercept, only to vanish under barrages that ripped through shields like tissue. Relay core exposed. A voice snapped from tactical. "Erase it," Logan said. The Revenant's spinal cannon rotated into alignment. Its barrel glowed, building energy until the air inside the command deck shimmered with heat. And then it spoke, a single beam of light so pure it burned color from the spectrum, lancing across the void into the relay's heart. For an instant, the relay was there, a spire of glass and alloy suspended in the stars. Then it was gone, replaced by a sun-bright explosion that lit the system like dawn. Helios Prime screamed. Its skies burned as fragments of the shattered relay rained down, fire carving scars into its oceans. On the Revenant's bridge, Logan watched without a flicker of emotion. "Helios is blind," he said. "Move to Phase 2. Far away in the council chamber, alarms wailed. The Speaker of the Council rose from his throne as the reports came flooding in. Helios relay destroyed. 87 platforms offline. First Fleet annihilated. How? Virik hissed, his scales pale with dread. How do they strike so deep, so fast? The Speaker's voice was a blade of ice. Because we underestimated them. Another report flashed across the holoscreen. Human transmission detected. The counselors leaned forward as the message appeared. 4 words etched in crimson across. The void. You should have left him. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the council felt something they had long forgotten. Fear. The council chamber no longer shimmered with calm light. It boiled with chaos. Dozens of aides darted between command nodes, data streams flooding the air with frantic warnings. Systems in flames. Fleets in disarray. Helios Prime, the unbreakable. Bastion had fallen in less than an hour. The Speaker stood at the heart of the storm, towering above the counselors as the galaxy spun in holographic fire around him. Entire sectors glowed crimson where human forces struck with surgical precision. Supply lines severed. Relay nodes erased. How do they move so fast? Virik hissed, his voice ragged with fear. How did we not see this coming? They hid. In the shadows, growled Counselor Drax, his molten eyes narrowing. They built their fleet under our very noses. For centuries they bided their time. The speaker's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Enough, the chamber froze. They want a war? His voice deepened, resonating through the walls, vibrating the bones of every being present. Then they shall have one that will scorch the stars. He raised a hand. The galaxy's projection shifted, zooming in on a cluster of worlds deep within the Orion Expansa region, shrouded in secrecy for millennia. Awaken the Titans! A murmur rippled through the chamber, part awe, part horror. Speaker, Virik faltered, the Titans are not bound by the Accords. Their deployment is. Do you think the humans care for treaties now? The speaker thundered. Do you think they will stop at Helios? They will burn every vanguard world, topple every spire we have built, unless we break them here, now. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. To call upon the Titans was to unleash devastation not seen since the War of Ascendance. Each Titan was not a ship, it was a world killer, a fortress forged from the hearts of dead stars, armed with weapons that could strip atmospheres and boil oceans, and there were 5 of them. Summon the Obsidian Legions, the speaker commanded. Every elite, every war clone, every dread knight, send them to the front. Drax bared his jagged teeth in grim approval. And the humans' colonies? Glass them, the speaker said coldly. Every world that flies their banner will burn. Let them watch their homes die. Let them understand the cost of defiance. Orders rippled out like lightning through hyperspace. Deep in the Orion expanse, titanic structures stirred in their cradles of dark matter and ice. Great engines roared to life, shaking entire moons as they tore free from ancient docks. Shields the size of continents shimmered across their hulls, hiding arsenals older than the Council itself. The first Titan breached the void, a mountain of black metal crowned, with towers of plasma and spires bristling with annihilation cannons. Its name flared across the fleet net in crimson glyphs. Eclipse dot behind it came another, then another, until 5 shadows marched across the stars, their passage dimming suns. On Varelia Prime, the speaker stood before the assembled council and spoke the words that had not been uttered in 1,000 years. By decree of the 12, we invoke final sanction. This war will not end until humanity bends or breaks. Far across the galaxy, aboard the Revenant, encrypted sensors whispered of something vast stirring in the dark. Logan stared at the readings, his jaw tightening. As the impossible took shape on the display. Titans. For the first time since the war began, he felt the weight of the enemy's resolve. Bring us to full burn, Logan ordered. His voice was quiet, but the steel in it could have cut stars. They want a storm? We'll show them what one looks like. The Revenant turned, engines igniting like newborn suns. Around it, the human fleet shifted formation, readying for the fire to come. War was no longer coming, it was here. And it would end with galaxies in ruin. The Revenant's command deck was a cathedral of steel and firelight, the hum of its reactors a steady pulse beneath the low murmur of voices. But now silence ruled. Every officer stood frozen, staring at the data cascading across the HOL-sphere. Titans, 5 of them, moving through the Orion expanse with the inevitability of a collapsing star. They're bigger than anything we've faced, murmured Kessler, his scarred jaw tightening. And they're fast, faster than physics says they should be. Logan didn't answer. He stood at the edge of the tactical display, hands clasped behind his back, eyes locked on the spectral shadows of the Council's war machines. Each Titan was the size of a small moon, bristling with annihilation cannons and void shields so dense they bent light, one-on-one. Even a Leviathan dreadnought wouldn't last a minute, which meant the fleet had to fight smarter. Or die, Logan exhaled slowly. Then he spoke a single phrase, "Open Vault 7." The command rippled through the ship's encrypted channels, triggering protocols so old they bore the signatures of Earth's First Admiralty. Deep within the Revenant's databanks, locks disengaged, files sealed for centuries awakened, their icons glowing crimson on the command console. "Sir," said Navarre, the signals officer, her voice trembling despite herself. "Are you sure?" Logan turned to face her, his expression carved from stone. The Council just tore up every treaty they ever wrote. Titans are in play. It's time they learned why they locked us down in the first place. One by one, the displays lit up not with standard fleet schematics, but with blueprints whispered about in legend, dismissed as myths by the younger generations. Ships older than nations, forged in secret shipyards hidden beneath dead suns, the Shadow Fleet, 40. Hulls built during the Silence War, each one a predator designed to kill gods. Stealth systems that warped reality. Cannons powered by singularity cores. Weapons so savage they were erased from every public archive after the Accords, entombed in the cold dark because their very existence threatened galactic stability until... Now, Logan's voice was steady, but beneath it throbbed a current of wrath barely contained. Bring them online. All of them. Across forgotten corners of the galaxy, black vaults stirred. Ice cracked on tomb worlds. Vast hangars carved into the bones of asteroids groaned as ancient doors split apart. And from the shadows they came blacker than the void, their hulls, swallowing light, their silhouettes bristling with weapons outlawed for centuries. No insignia, no beacon codes. Only a single mark burned into their skin, a crimson chain, shattered in two. As the Shadow Fleet rose from its crypts, encrypted signals pulsed through human command nets. Leviathan captains saluted with clenched fists. Frigate crews whispered prayers older than their bloodlines. They all knew what this meant. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were going hunting. Kessler said quietly, "Even with the shadows, those titans are monsters." Logan's eyes burned like twin suns. "Then we make them bleed." He turned toward the galaxy spread before him, fingers tracing the path of war yet to come. "Set course for the Aegis. Line, that's where they'll try to stop us. That's where we break them." The fleet shifted in silent unison, engines igniting like distant dawns. Behind them, the Shadow Fleet flowed into formation, a swarm of black knives against the starfield. Somewhere far ahead, 5 titans carved their path through the void. And between them and Earth stood the deadliest fleet humanity had ever birthed reborn, to finish a war that should have ended centuries ago. The first screams came from Viga's Reach, a lush frontier world, once alive with laughter and green skies, now burned in silence across 1,000 holofeeds. Cities of glass and steel gone, vaporized in a single breath of fire from the heavens. Orbiting above the ruins, the Titan eclipse lingered, its vast silhouette blotting out the sun like a god of death. From its spires, annihilation beams lanced downward in merciless arcs, turning oceans into clouds of steam, mountains into molten rivers. Its weapons didn't merely kill, they erased. Whole landscapes peeled away under their fury, leaving behind nothing but scorched bedrock glowing like the embers of creation. There were no warnings, no demands. Only a single broadcast, transmitted on every open channel as the world died. "This is the cost of defiance." Then the signal cut and Viga was no more. Within hours, the slaughter spread. Colonies from the rim to the midline vanished in storms of light, their skies torn apart by the Titan's wrath. Millions died before their names could even reach the war logs. For the Council, it was a message written in blood across the stars. To Earth, it was a wound that bled rage. Aboard the Revenant, the images burned across the command deck like ghosts. Logan stood before the holofeed as the last transmission from Viga flickered into static. A child's face frozen in terror. A sky aflame, his hands curled into fists. "Report," he said, voice low. "Dangerous. 17 colonies hit," Navarre whispered. 3 gone entirely. 4 more. No contact. "Sir, they're wiping us out." Kessler slammed a fist into the console, the impact rattling steel. "We should be out there, striking back, not sitting on this line." Logan turned. The look in his eyes silenced the room. "You think this isn't striking back?" He stabbed a finger toward the tactical sphere where the Aegis line glowed, like a crimson crescent across the void. "This is the kill zone. They're coming through here. Every fleet they've got, every Titan they can throw, and when they do, we'll tear them apart." He stepped closer to the display, voice dropping into a growl. "But only once? We don't get a second chance?" If we fail here, Earth burns, every last one of us burns. Silence fell like a shroud. Shadow Fleet status? Logan demanded. Black ready, Navarre said, recovering her composure. 40 hulls online, moving into formation. Singularity lances armed, cloak integrity at 100%. Good! Logan's gaze swept the star map, tracing the path where the Titans would strike. They think fear will break us. His voice hardened into iron. They forgot who they're fighting. Across the gulf of space, the Titans moved like mountains wreathed in fire. Scouts trailing their path caught fleeting glimpses, enough to send chills through even hardened veterans. Each Titan dragged an armada in its wake, dreadnoughts, carriers, ships of war so vast they blacked out the stars, but the Titans didn't. Meade escorts. They were war made manifest. The first engagement came at Proxima Gate, a relay station fortified with planetary guns and 3 Leviathans. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the gate was gone, its fragments orbiting as molten debris around a star that burned red with rage. The Leviathans? Vaporized before they could fire a second salvo. 6 minutes. The holofeeds captured the last image. Before blackout, a Titan firing its main weapon a beam so bright it carved a scar across the void, leaving after images in the eyes of those who saw it, a weapon that didn't just kill ships. It unmade reality where it struck. On the Revenant, Logan stared at the footage until the screen dimmed. His face was carved from granite, his voice a blade. They want a war of gods, he said. Fine, we'll give them one. He turned toward the Shadow Fleet captains assembled on the encrypted link. 40 faces stared back, their expressions grim, their oaths unspoken but ironclad. Deploy the shadows to the line, Logan ordered. And prepare the spear, Kessler frowned. The spear, sir? Logan's eyes gleamed like twin suns dying in fury. The thing we swore never to use. The cum fell silent. Even the void seemed to hold its breath. The void trembled, every sensor along the Aegis line screamed warnings as gravity wells rippled across the dark hundreds, then thousands. The Council Armada was coming, tearing reality apart as it translated. In from hyperspace, contacts. Navarre's voice cracked like a whip across the command deck. Multiple signatures, gods, there's too many. Say it, Logan said, cold and calm. 5 Titans, she whispered. And a fleet big enough to blot out a sun. The holosphere flared alive, painting the darkness in crimson threat. Icons. Waves of dreadnoughts, carriers, and skirmishers unfolded like an iron tide, stretching across the stars in a formation so vast it swallowed entire sectors. And at its heart, 5 shadows loomed colossal, monstrous, their shapes dwarfing mountains, their hulls wreathed in halos of energy. The Titans, Eclipse, Umbra, Obelisk, Helion, Nemesis. Kessler read their designations like a death chant. The whole damn pantheon. On cue, the Council's Warnet broadcast its challenge, a voice like thunder across every channel. This is the judgment of the 12. Lay down your arms or be erased. Logan didn't flinch. Send them silence, he said, and then the void ignited. The Council moved first. Their vanguard surged ahead, an ocean of warships firing in unison. The stars themselves drowning in lances of plasma and rivers of fire. The Aegis line answered with fury. Planetary guns roared, hurling. Slugs the size of towers at near-light speeds. Leviathans unleashed broadsides that shattered moons. Entire carriers vomited swarms of fighters into the fray. Clouds of steel gnashing at the enemy like locusts of war. Then the Titans fired. The first shot came from Obelisk, its primary cannon, spitting a lance of white that tore a Leviathan apart in a single heartbeat, splitting its kilometer-long hull as though it were glass. The beam didn't stop there. It carved through 2 more ships, then into the planet beyond, punching a wound so deep the mantle bled molten fire into space. Seconds later, Nemesis spoke, unleashing a pulse that shredded space-time itself. Ships caught in its path didn't explode. They vanished, erased from existence like ink wiped from parchment. The line buckled, but humanity did not break. Shadows unleash hell! Logan roared. The void shimmered, and the Shadow Fleet bared its fangs. 40 predators slid from cloak, their black hulls glistening like liquid night. Singularity lances spat beams of condensed gravity that ripped through dreadnoughts like paper. Phase torpedoes bloomed across the enemy ranks, tearing warships inside out, turning armored beasts into molten husks. The first Titan kill team struck hard. Umbra reeled under a storm of lances, its shields flaring white-hot as chunks of armor the size of cities peeled away. For the first time in millennia, a Titan bled fire. Cheers erupted across the shadow. Comes cut short when Umbra turned and unleashed its wrath. One salvo. That's all it took. 3 shadows died in silence, their hulls collapsing into imploding spheres as the Titan's counterstrike crushed their singularity cores. The blast lit the void like a newborn star, scattering human formations in waves of shock. "Regroup! Tighten the net!" Logan barked, his voice steady even as the battlefield burned around him. "We bleed them slow, no glory kills." "Hold the line." The Revenant dove through chaos, guns vomiting storms of fire. Its flanks spat gravitic shards that sliced Council cruisers in two, while its dorsal lance hurled annihilation into the shields of Helion. But even as the Titan staggered, the cost mounted. Human frigates blossomed into fireballs. Leviathans died screaming across the fleet net. The void drank blood and flame in equal measure. Then the Titans advanced. Step one, burn, and the Aegis line cracked. The planet-bound guns fell silent, their continents boiling as eclipse erased them with contemptuous ease. On the command deck, alarms screamed like banshees. Navarre's voice was hoarse. "We're losing the left flank. Shadows 7 through 12 gone." Kessler slammed another command through. "Bring up the spear." Logan's jaw tightened. His eyes burned as he stared at the holomappa crimson ocean swallowing the last bastion of Earth's hope. "Not yet," he whispered. "They haven't bled enough." And then the Titans turned as 1-5 gods, leveling their fury at the heart of the human fleet, the Revenant. Logan met their wrath with a thin, cold smile. "So," he murmured, "you finally noticed the knife at your throat." The void burned white as death itself came screaming down. The void was fire. Flames licked the black between stars as shattered hulls drifted like bones in a cosmic grave. The Aegis line, once a fortress wall of steel and resolve, was breaking apart, collapsing under the fury of gods. Council banners burned bright across the holosphere. Their Titans loomed inexorable, wreathed in halos of annihilation as they advanced through the wreckage. Every salvo that struck them was a pinprick against a mountain. Every human ship destroyed was a scream. In the void, fleet integrity at 30%. Navarre's voice was raw, shredded by hours of shouting over alarms. "Leviathans 2 and 3 gone, orbital platforms offline." On the tactical display, the crimson tide surged deeper, devouring what remained of the line. "Shadows?" Logan demanded. "Down to 24, she whispered. "Sir, we can't hold this." Kessler spun from his station, rage and desperation blazing in his eyes. "We've bled them enough. If you're going to play the damn card, play it now." Logan didn't answer at first. He stood at the viewport, watching as a Titan's beam scythed through the wreckage of an entire battle group ships detonating. In ripples of fire, men and women screaming their last through fractured combs. His reflection in the glass was hollow-eyed, carved from stone. He'd sworn he would never use it. That no human would. That the price was too high. But that was before the Council burned Vega, before they erased children for the crime of existing, before the Titans came for Earth. He turned slowly, voice quiet but heavy as a collapsing star, armed the spear. The bridge froze. Even the alarms seemed to hesitate, as if the universe itself held its breath. Navarre stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, the spear is—" "I know what it is," Logan cut in. "Do it." Her hands trembled as they danced across the command keys. Deep within the belly of the Revenant, locks disengaged with the groan of titanic machinery. Seals older than nations split apart, exhaling air that hadn't tasted life in centuries. The ship shuddered as containment fields came online, black and cold as the grave. Lights flickered. Gravity warped. tugging at reality like a predator. Testing the leash, the spear wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. No warhead, no beam. No blade. It was a wound, a tear driven through the fabric of existence, dragging with it the one thing the Council believed untouchable. Oblivion. In the heart of the Revenant. The chamber bloomed with impossible light as the Singularity engine spun up a device older than the Alliance itself, forged in the dark days after first contact. When Earth had stared into the abyss and decided it would not blink, they built it in secret. Locked it away, buried the blueprints beneath oceans of lies. Because the spear wasn't meant for war. It was meant for vengeance. For the day the sky fell and humanity had nothing left to lose, that day had come. Containment stable, Navarre. Reported, voice barely a whisper. For now, how long? Logan asked. She hesitated. 10 minutes. Maybe less before the core destabilizes. Plenty of time, Logan said. Sir. Kessler stepped closer, his face pale beneath the blood and grime. Once we fire this, there's no going back. It'll take them, but it'll take us too. Logan met his gaze, unflinching. We were dead the moment they crossed the line. This way, we take the bastards with us. He turned back to the viewport, where the Titans loomed closer, their weapons charging for the killing stroke. 5 gods descending to smite a world. Logan bared his teeth in a grim smile. Let's see how gods bleed. The spear's locks thundered open. The chamber pulsed with blinding radiance, as if a newborn star writhed within the Revenant's core. Space bent around the ship, the stars warping into long, trembling lines. On every Council channel, alarms screamed warnings. Titan sensors flared, white-hot as they registered the impossible, a gravitational anomaly swelling, like a storm at the heart of the human fleet. They didn't understand. Not yet. Target? Navarre asked, her hands trembling on the firing keys. Logan's eyes locked on the holomap. The Titans burned bright at its center, smug in their invincibility. All of them, he said. Her breath caught. Sir, fire! Navarre's fingers fell, the spear screamed. A beam of pure night tore from the Revenant's core, a line of darkness, so deep it devoured light itself. Reality buckled and shattered in its wake, the void folding inward as gravity howled like a beast unchained. The Titans turned in unison, their shields flaring, weapons discharging in blind desperation. But the spear was no weapon forged by hands. It was a wound in creation, a hunger that could not be sated, and it was aimed at their hearts. The void screamed. Where the spear struck, space itself ruptured, the beam carved through the dark like a blade of anti-light, unraveling the fabric of reality as it ripped toward the Council armada. The first Titan, Umbra, met it head-on, shields blazing with the fury of 10 suns. For a fraction of a second it held. For a fraction of a second? The gods believed themselves immortal, then the beam ate its shield. Then its armor, then its bones. Umbra didn't explode. It collapsed, crushed inward as the Singularity dragged its heart into oblivion. Fragments the size of cities stretched and shattered, spaghettified into threads of molten metal before vanishing. Into the wound in space. The other Titans panicked. Titans, gods of war, panicked. They poured fire into the void, beams lashing like whips of wrath, detonations rippling across the emptiness. But every shot bent, every blast twisted, consumed. By the gravity storm blooming from the spear's strike, Nemesis tried to run. Too slow. The Singularity's hunger caught its tail and tore it apart like wet paper. Dragging its carcass into the black, Obelisk and Helion fared no better. Their massive forms buckled as internal reactors breached, spewing suns into the void before. They were snuffed out like candles. Even Eclipse, the largest of them all, staggered. Its voice boomed across the spectrum, a command broadcast in raw terror. Contain the anomaly! ALLUNITS. The transmission ended in a scream as its spinal core fractured. Folding in on itself, the Council fleet shattered. Warships broke formation, scattering in blind desperation as the spear's gravity storm howled. Entire cruisers slammed into one another as orbits destabilized, hulls grinding into molten slag before being swallowed by the black tide. For a moment, just a moment, It looked like victory. Like humanity had slain the UNKIL. Then the Revenant groaned. Warning klaxons detonated across the command deck as gravity surged through the hull. Panels blew apart in showers of sparks. Bulkheads warped, tearing like foil. Containment! Breach! Navarre screamed, blood streaming from her nose. The course collapsing into the singularity, where the deck bucked, hurling crew across the bridge. Logan slammed against the rail, teeth cracking, blood filling his mouth. Through the viewport he saw the wound. The spear's beam had birthed a vortex that was eating everything, including them. They had opened the door to nothingness. Now nothingness wanted everything. Kill it, Kessler bellowed, clawing his way back to his station. Shut it down. Navarre's fingers flew, but her face was ash. It won't stop. The failsafe's gone. The damn thing is feeding on itself. Logan dragged himself upright, bones screaming, lungs burning in the warped gravity. Around him, the bridge was chaos consoles exploding. Men and women screaming as their blood boiled in sudden pressure drops. He stared at the holomap, at the Titans dying, at the fleet burning, at the void tearing itself apart, and he understood the spear wasn't a weapon, it was a chain reaction, a wound that widened every time it fed. And now it had tasted Titans. Sir, Navarre choked, if this spreads, it'll take the system, Earth, everything. Kessler's voice was raw, broken. You have to eject the core, now. Logan looked at them, at the men and women who had followed him into hell, and felt something cold settle in his chest. There's no time, he said softly. Navarre's eyes widened in horror. Sir, Logan stepped to the command throne, hands steady despite the tremor in the deck. He keyed in a string of codes no one else aboard even knew existed. Ancient commands buried in the Revenant's bones, back when it was built for this one purpose. The chair locked around him with a hiss. Restraints snapped like steel vipers across his arms and chest. Neural jacks bit into his spine. Logan, what are you doing? Kessler roared, fighting against the pull of the collapsing ship. Finishing it. Logan's voice was calm now, like the eye of a storm. You can't steer a spear after it leaves the bow, unless you become the bow. The neural rig burned through his skull as the ship bled into him, its systems, its engines, its dying heartbeat all merging with his own. The Revenant screamed in his veins. He felt the singularity clawing at the edge of reality, felt its hunger as if it were his own. He could push it, he could aim it, but only if he let go of everything else. Get to the escape pods, he rasped, through the blood in his throat. That's an order. Logan, go. For a second Kessler just stared at him. Then he grabbed Navarre and dragged her toward the lift as the deck ripped open behind them, air howling into the void. Logan closed his eyes. He felt the spear pulsing like a black sun inside his chest, screaming for release. And then he smiled. You wanted judgment, he whispered to the Titans dying in the dark. Here it is. The Revenant ignited every engine it had, plunging into the singularity with a roar that split the heavens. The Revenant plunged like a burning comet, wreathed in streams of molten metal and arcs of black lightning as it dove toward the singularity. Gravity tore at the ship's bones, peeling armor from its frame in shrieking ribbons. Deck after deck collapsed inward, crew compartments imploding as the void's hunger clawed deeper. Escape pods ripped free and vanished into the black like drops of rain into an ocean. Logan felt it all, through the neural rig. He was the ship now. Every rupture was a nerve snapping. Every scream in the coms was a pulse of agony hammering his brain. His blood boiled in sync with ruptured coolant lines. His ribs groaned with the hull. But beneath the pain, there was clarity. The singularity wasn't mindless. Not anymore. It was growing, evolving, a beast born from physics and fury, feeding on Titans like a predator tasting godflesh for the first time, and it wanted more. Arth's skies burned gold as the message arrived. A garbled, broken stream of words carried across light years, barely coherent through static. Titans. Gone. Wound. Growing. They're coming. Navarre's voice choked. Terrified. The War Council sat in silence as the feed cut to black. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Admiral Thorne spoke, his voice a hollow echo. Logan did it. Cheers erupted in some corners. The Titans were dead, the Council Armada shattered. Humanity had survived the impossible, but the joy was brittle. Because on every screen hovered an image taken by Navarre's failing pod, a vortex of perfect darkness, and around it shapes like shadows given. Hunger. Dr. Ilyavos, chief of xenotheology, whispered what everyone feared. That's not a wound. Her eyes were glassy, wide with dread. It's a gate. Silence fell again. Far beyond Earth, in the ruins of the Aegis Line, the Council's survivors floated in exile. The once mighty Archons gathered aboard a crippled dreadnought, their robes torn, their voices venomous. This is Logan's doing, hissed Chancellor Vale. His species has doomed us all. Perhaps, said another, staring at the image of the vortex. But if this door stays open, revenge will not matter. Nothing will. Even as they argued, the wound pulsed again, a heartbeat that rippled through subspace like a drum calling. Something home. And the shapes kept coming, not ships. Not life as they knew it. Just geometry made hunger, spreading like infection. Obeying no law but expansion, Navarre's last words, buried in static, played again across Earth's networks. It's awake! The War Council stared at the growing darkness on their screens, the cheers dead now, replaced by the slow, crushing weight of understanding. The war was over, and something far worse had just begun. If it spread, it would consume the Sol system, then the spiral arm, then everything. The Council's war would mean nothing because there would be no galaxy left to rule. Logan clenched phantom fists of steel, driving the Revenant's broken engines harder. Plasma drives screamed as they overloaded, vomiting blue fire into the abyss. He felt the Singularity's gravity clawing, trying to rip the ship apart atom by atom. Not yet. He had one more shot. Target lock. He rasped through blood-flecked lips, though no one could hear him now. Council fleet. The holomap flickered in his mind's eye. Hundreds of ships still lingered on the periphery battlecruisers. Carriers, the last surviving Titans, dragging themselves out of the gravity well like wounded beasts. They thought they were safe. They thought distance would save them. Logan grinned through the agony. Think again. He funneled everything reactors, engines, shields into the spear core. The Revenant groaned like a dying god as containment fields shattered, releasing raw energy in waves that scorched the void. The Singularity bucked like a living thing. It didn't want to be steered. It wanted to devour everything, starting with him. Not today, Logan hissed. He reached deeper, past pain, past fear, into the black river of power roaring through his skull. Neural fire scorched his synapses. Blood streamed from his eyes in molten rivulets. His heartbeat became thunder for one heartbeat. He held infinity in his hands and he hurled it. The Revenant detonated in a blast brighter than dawn, driving the Singularity like a spear through the heart of the Council fleet. Reality convulsed. Space folded in on itself as the black wound screamed across the stars, dragging Titans and dreadnoughts into its maw. The Council Armada writhed like a nest of serpents on fire, vessels twisting, splintering, vanishing into nothingness as the Singularity chewed them down to quarks. The shockwave tore through the void, hurling escape pods like autumn leaves. For an instant, every sensor in the system went blind, flooded with gravitational noise as physics itself bent under the weight of the wound. When the darkness cleared, the Titans were gone. The fleet was gone. So was the Revenant, only a widening scar remained, a vortex of black spiraling at the edge of Sol, pulsing with a hunger that had tasted divinity and found it sweet. Navarre's pod tumbled through the void, her face pale as she stared at the growing anomaly on her cracked display. What? Have we done? She whispered, voice hollow. No answer came. The Cums were dead, but somewhere in the black beyond the howling gravity storm, past the event horizon, Logan's mind drifted, and he wasn't alone. Something watched him from the other side of the wound, something vast, something patient, something that had been waiting for this door to open since the first star burned, and it smiled. Silence. For the first time in weeks, the void was silent. No cannon fire, no screaming Cums. No titans blotting out the stars, just wreckage, thousands of shattered hulls drifted across the black, their twisted frames glowing faintly from residual plasma burns. Fragments of ships once symbols of council supremacy floated like bones picked clean by vultures, and at the heart of it all, spinning slowly against the cold stars, was the scar, a vortex of perfect darkness, a spiral wound in reality itself, its edges flickering with whispers of light that bent and broke as they neared the event horizon. It pulsed like a living heart, sending tremors across the system every time it throbbed. Navarre's escape pod spun lazily, the pods cracked. Canopy giving her a clear view of the wound? Her breath fogged the glass as she stared, unblinking. She'd seen war. She'd seen planets burn. But this? This was something else. The neural echo of Logan's last words still lingered in her skull, burned into her synapses like a brand. You wanted judgment. Here it is. A soft tone jolted her. A come signal, weak, fading. Kessler? She croaked, throat raw. Still. Alive, came the reply, ragged and coughing. His pod drifted nearby, hull scarred and venting vapor. Report? Navarre's eyes stayed locked on the wound. He did it, she whispered. Titans gone, the fleet's gone. There was a long pause. Then Kessler asked the question neither wanted to say, and the captain? Navarre's lips trembled. Gone too. Silence pressed between them like gravity. Finally, Kessler exhaled, a sound like a man drowning. He bought us a future, he said hoarsely. Don't waste it. But as Navarre stared at the vortex pulsing in the dark, she wondered if they had a future at all, because the wound was growing, slowly, imperceptibly. But growing, every sensor ping confirmed it. The anomaly wasn't stabilizing. It wasn't collapsing. It was feeding, pulling in dust, debris, even distant comets, and something was whispering through the static, a vibration that wasn't random, patterns, rhythms, almost like a heartbeat. A tremor rippled through her pod, sending hairline cracks racing across the canopy. Navarre flinched, eyes wide. What was that? She snapped. Kessler's voice came back tight, controlled, but she heard the fear beneath it. Not sure. But we need to move. Now. Navarre reached for the thruster controls, but a shadow slid across the stars outside her viewport. For a heartbeat, she thought it was wreckage, then it moved against the drift. Her blood turned to ice. Kessler. I see it, he said, voice flat. Shapes, dozens of them. No hundreds. Silhouettes gliding out of the black, smooth and silent, as if carved from the night itself. They had no engines, no lights. Just a cold geometry that hurt the eyes if she stared too long, and they were coming from the wound, the static in her. Comes twisted, resolving for an instant into something that almost sounded like a word, a whisper, deep and ancient, curling like smoke through her mind. Hungry. Navarre slammed the pod's ignition, thrusters flaring as the pod jerked away from the anomaly. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Kessler, we have to warn them, Earth everyone. Her voice choked off as she looked back one last time. The shapes weren't following. They didn't need to dot, they were spreading, like seeds on the wind, dot, and as the wound pulsed again, louder now, almost eager, Navarre realized the truth. Logan hadn't just killed the Titans. He'd opened the door, and something had stepped through.